Hey everyone, welcome to this deep video into more heartbreaking aviation tragedy. We're jumping straight into the devastating crash of Air India Flight 100 by Din, a Boeing 700 Thamiwan Dreamliner that went down just moments after takeoff. This is a tough one to talk about, folks, with around 242 souls lost on board and likely casualties on the ground as well. Our hearts go out to the families, friends, and loved ones of the passengers, crew, and anyone affected on the ground. If you're moved by this story and find this video meaningful, drop a 1 in the comments to show your support. Let's start with the footage that's been circulating online, captured by someone from a nearby apartment. It's gut-wrenching to watch, no sugarcoating it. You see the Boeing Betty Pat right after takeoff, and something's clearly off. The wings on this aircraft are designed to flex upward, a hyper-efficient feature that makes the Dreamliner a standout in fuel efficiency and performance. But in this clip, the wings look unusually skinny, almost too streamlined. Normally, during takeoff or low-altitude flight, you'd expect to see the flaps extended. Flaps are critical on heavy jets like this. They change the shape of the wing to allow the plane to fly at slower speeds without stalling. Without them deployed, it's a red flag. If the flaps are up, as it appears in the video, that's not what you'd want right after leaving the runway. It's a configuration that could spell disaster at low speeds, making the aircraft struggle to maintain lift. Rewinding the tape, let's walk through what should happen during a normal takeoff. There are 2 pilots in the cockpit, one flying and one monitoring. The flying pilot initiates the rotation by pulling back on the yoke, that's the control column on a Boeing Baiteka, to lift the nose off the ground. The monitoring pilot keeps an eye on the instruments and calls out positive rate once the vertical velocity indicator shows the plane is climbing. That's the signal to retract the landing gear. The flying pilot says gear up, and the monitoring pilot flips the switch to bring the gear into the fuselage. But the flaps? They stay down for a while. You don't touch them until the aircraft reaches specific speeds that are safe for retracting them. Flaps come up gradually, one setting at a time, as the plane accelerates. It's a synchronized dance. Increase speed, retract a bit. Increase again, retract more. This ensures the jet doesn't lose lift too early. Seeing the flaps completely up in this footage, especially so soon after takeoff, raises serious questions. If this was an emergency, like a crash landing scenario, you'd want those flaps down to slow the plane and maintain control. Gear up, sure, since you're airborne, but flaps up? That's a head-scratcher. Now, looking closer at the video, there's more to unpack. Near the end of the clip, the angle of attack, or AOA, which is how the wing is positioned relative to the airflow, seems off. The elevator, a control surface on the tail, appears to be pitched down slightly, almost like the plane is trying to dig in and gain lift. You can imagine the pilots in the cockpit pulling back on the yoke, desperately trying to figure out why they're descending instead of climbing. The aircraft's wing seems to be tilting more, increasing that angle of attack as if it's fighting to stay aloft. Another detail stands out. The plane is in level flight. No obvious yaw or roll to one side. If there was an issue with just one engine, like a bird strike or mechanical failure, you'd expect some uneven thrust, causing the jet to veer or yaw to one side. But that's not visible here. This suggests either both engines were functioning normally or both were out. Either way, it's a dire situation. In those final moments, the pilots likely had no choice but to pull back hard on the controls, doing whatever they could to keep the plane in the air. Tragically, it wasn't enough. Let's shift to the crash site itself to get a better sense of what happened. The Boeing 787 took off from runway 23 at Ahmedabad Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport in India, and the wreckage ended up in a straight line off the end of that runway. This is telling. If there was an engine failure on one side, you'd expect the crash site to be offset, not directly aligned with the runway path. Instead, it's a near-perfect extension of the takeoff trajectory, pointing again to either a dual-engine issue or some other systemic failure that didn't cause asymmetric thrust. The crash occurred in Meghani Nagar, a densely populated residential area which only adds to the tragedy. Reports describe the aircraft slamming into a doctor's hostel, erupting into a massive fireball. Video from the ground shows the tail of the jet protruding from a building, surrounded by thick black smoke billowing into the sky. It's a haunting image, one that underscores the scale of loss here. To understand the takeoff itself, let's map out the airport layout. Ahmedabad Airport, with the identifier VAAH, has a single main runway, runway high 23, that's 11,500 feet long. That's plenty of pavement for a Boeing 787, even fully loaded. Based on typical operations, the aircraft likely taxied from the international terminal, following a route through taxiways labeled Gulf, Papa, and Romeo 4, before back-taxing on runway 23 since there's no parallel taxiway. They'd line up for a 180-degree turn to position for takeoff, possibly from midfield. There's some online chatter suggesting a midfield takeoff might have been a factor, but that doesn't add up given the airport's layout and standard procedures. A fully loaded 787 needs around 9,200 to 9,800 feet for its takeoff roll, meaning the point of rotation, where the nose lifts off, would be well before the runway's end, leaving thousands of feet unused. Right after takeoff, with a positive climb rate confirmed, the gear would come up within a quarter mile off the runway's end. Flaps, as mentioned, would stay extended for longer to ensure safe acceleration. So why does the configuration in the video look so wrong? Now, let's dive into the specifics of Air India Flight 171. This flight was scheduled to depart from Ahmedabad on June 12, number 2025, bound for London Gatwick Airport. The aircraft was a Boeing Baichi 708 Dreamliner, registration VT-ON-B, a modern marvel in aviation with a reputation for safety. It took off at 1:38 p.m. local time, but within seconds, something went horribly wrong. The jet reached a maximum altitude of just 625 feet, barely clearing the treetops, before plummeting into the residential area. The flight crew managed to issue a mayday call, a desperate cry for help, but communication was lost almost immediately, likely due to the catastrophic impact and ensuing fireball. Local police confirmed the worst: no survivors from the aircraft and likely casualties on the ground as well. This marks the first fatal crash in the Boeing's 708's 14-year history, a jet that's been celebrated for its stellar safety record until now. With the investigation led by India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau still ongoing, there's no definitive cause yet, but theories are swirling, and it's worth exploring them to understand what might have led to this disaster. One leading speculation is a dual-engine failure or significant thrust loss in the plane's General Electric GNX engines. Eyewitness accounts and video evidence suggest the landing gear remained extended, which could point to a hydraulic system failure. On the 787, hydraulic systems rely on engine-driven pumps, so if the engines falter, so could the hydraulics, preventing gear retraction. There are unconfirmed reports that the pilots mentioned engine issues in their mayday call, details that might be clarified once the cockpit voice recorder is analyzed. Dual-engine failure is incredibly rare, especially on a modern aircraft like this, but it's not impossible. Potential causes could include fuel contamination or starvation, where the engines didn't get enough fuel due to a blockage or supply issue. Another possibility is a bird strike affecting both engines, though weather reports from that day indicate clear skies and no such incidents were noted. Mechanical issues like fan blade damage or compressor stalls could also play a role. Past GNX engine issues, such as a 2016 FAA directive about fan ice imbalances, highlight potential vulnerabilities, though ice wouldn't be a factor here given the warm 30 degrees Celsius temperatures in Ahmedabad. Another theory floating around on platforms like X is a takeoff performance miscalculation. Some suggest the plane might have started its rollout from the middle of the runway, reducing the available length to build speed and altitude. However, as discussed earlier, the airport layout and typical procedures make this unlikely. The 787 had more than enough runway to work with, and pilots are trained to calculate takeoff performance meticulously, accounting for weight, temperature, and runway conditions. Still, human error can't be ruled out entirely until the data is in. Additionally, this particular aircraft had recently undergone refurbishment, raising questions about potential maintenance issues. Was something missed during the overhaul? Could improper wiring, hydraulic faults, or other errors have been introduced? It's purely speculative at this point, but anytime a jet comes out of a maintenance depot, it's natural to scrutinize the work done. Past Boeing 787 incidents, like the 2013 lithium-ion battery fires that grounded the fleet, or quality control issues with fuselage joints, fuel speculation about manufacturing or maintenance flaws, though there's no evidence linking those to this crash. For now, it's important to ease concerns. There's no indication this tragedy stems from known historical issues with the 787. Let's talk about what could cause a modern jet like the 787 to lose thrust in both engines. Beyond fuel issues or bird strikes, systemic failures in the aircraft's electronics could be a factor. The Dreamliner relies heavily on integrated avionics for engine control and other critical functions. If a fault disrupted those systems, it could lead to thrust loss, though such an event would be unprecedented for this model. Maintenance errors during refurbishment could also introduce issues, but pilots and ground crews have multiple checks in place to catch anomalies before takeoff. Every day, airline pilots step into the cockpit and run through pre-flight checklists, coordinating with maintenance if anything seems off. It'd be shocking if this jet departed with a known issue. Still, history offers examples of dual-engine failures. Take U.S. Airways Flight 1549 in 2009, the Miracle on the Hudson, where Captain Sully Sullenberger landed on the Hudson River after birds struck both engines. Even in that emergency, flaps were extended to slow the plane for a safer ditching. Similarly, a 1995 crash involving an AWAC aircraft at Elmendorf Air Force Base saw both engines fail due to geese ingestion, but flaps were likely kept down to maintain control at low speed. In contrast, the Air India 171 suggests flaps were up, a configuration that would make maintaining lift nearly impossible at low altitude. Now, let's zoom out and talk about the Boeing 787 itself. The Dreamliner is a masterpiece of engineering, launched in 2011 and now with over 1,100 in service worldwide. It's a long-haul, wide-body jet with a staggering range of 13,530 kilometers, built using 50% composite materials like carbon fiber reinforced polymers. This makes it lighter and roughly 20% more fuel-efficient than older models like the Boeing 767. It's powered by either General Electric GEnx or Rolls-Royce Trent 1000 engines, both beasts that use cutting-edge tech like ceramic matrix composites for heat resistance and efficiency. The 787 features a fly-by-wire control system, replacing traditional mechanical controls with electronic signals for smoother, more precise handling. Its high-bypass engine design cuts noise by up to 60% compared to older jets, while the cabin is pressurized to a lower altitude of 6,000 feet instead of 8,000, reducing passenger fatigue. Add to that larger, electronically dimmable windows and advanced avionics with real-time weather data and satellite communication, and you've got a jet designed for safety and comfort. Pilots who fly it rave about its capabilities, and its safety record, until now, has been impeccable, with nearly 5 million flights and over 30 million flight hours without a fatal incident. That said, the 700 Tham Street 10 hasn't been without challenges. The 2013 battery fire issue grounded the fleet temporarily, and quality control problems in HamHealth 2021 halted deliveries. A 2024 whistleblower raised concerns about improper fuselage fastening, though Boeing dismissed these as non-immediate safety risks, and investigations found no urgent issues. Modern jets like the 787 are built with redundancy in mind. Dual computers, backup hydraulics, multiple power sources to ensure safety even if one system fails. Despite this tragedy, confidence in the 787 remains high among aviation professionals. But this crash is a sobering reminder that even the most advanced aircraft aren't immune to failure, and human factors, whether pilot error or maintenance oversight, are often part of the equation. So, how do we prevent future tragedies? The aviation industry must double down on rigorous maintenance protocols, especially for recently refurbished aircraft. Even if maintenance wasn't a factor here, this serves as a wake-up call to revisit the basics. Enhanced pilot training for low-altitude emergencies is also critical. Takeoff and landing phases are statistically the most dangerous, and throwing an emergency like dual engine failure into the mix at low altitude leaves little room for error. Simulations and training for such scenarios can make a difference. Boeing and GE Aerospace are supporting the investigation, and the black box data, both the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder, will be key to pinpointing what went wrong. Innovations like real-time flight data monitoring and predictive maintenance tech could also catch issues before they escalate, adding another layer of safety. Despite this heartbreaking loss, let's put things in perspective. Air travel remains incredibly safe. Statistically, the odds of dying in a plane crash are less than 1 in 11 million. Each incident, as rare as they are, leads to improvements that make flying even safer. Global aviation standards are stricter than ever, and modern aircraft are designed with layers of redundancy to handle failures. While we mourn the lives lost in this crash, the data shows you can still step onto a plane with confidence. The industry learns from every tragedy, implementing changes to prevent repeats. This crash will undoubtedly lead to new insights and safety measures, ensuring that the skies remain a safe place for millions of travelers. Now, let's wrap up with a personal take from someone who spent years in the cockpit. Looking at the footage, there's no clear heat signature from the engines, making it hard to tell if there was thrust or not. If the engines were functioning, raising the flaps fully at such a low altitude would be catastrophic. It's essentially a death sentence. Without flaps, the jet can't maintain lift at low speeds, leading to a stall or a sinking sensation even with full power. Imagine this scenario, though it's unverified. If the pilot monitoring, perhaps a less experienced first officer, accidentally retracted the flaps fully while leaving the gear down after the captain called gear up, it could create a situation where the aircraft feels like it's losing thrust. The captain, focused on scanning for traffic or obstacles outside, might not immediately notice the configuration error until it's too late. That sinking feeling would mimic a loss of thrust, even if the engines were fine. Alternatively, if both engines did fail, the lack of flaps still compounds the problem. Standard procedure in an emergency landing or ditching is to extend flaps to slow down and maintain control. The configuration in the video, flaps up, gear possibly down, doesn't align with standard emergency protocols, suggesting either a mechanical issue, a pilot error, or a combination of both. Without black box data, it's impossible to say definitively, but this looks like a situation where something went terribly wrong in those critical first moments after takeoff. There's also the question of thrust itself. If both engines were out, it could point to a systemic issue like fuel starvation or a rare dual bird strike. If they were working, the flap configuration might be the primary culprit. The lack of yaw in the footage leans away from a single engine failure. Again, it looks like both engines were either on or off. As this investigation unfolds, more details will emerge and updates will be shared to keep everyone informed. For now, it's a waiting game until the official report provides clarity. Thanks for sticking through this detailed breakdown. To everyone watching, what do you think happened with Air India Flight 171? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if this video resonated with you or helped shed light on this tragedy, please leave a 1 to show your support. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on aviation safety content like this. Thanks for watching, folks. This is a tough topic, but discussing it helps honor those lost and pushes for a safer future in the skies. See you in the next video. Signing off.